All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first ReSharper and Rider release party. We're a bit late this time, but also we are happy that we can host this time on the .NET Foundation channel. I will do a quick introduction maybe for folks that don't know us already, but I see a couple of familiar faces already in the chat. We have Maarten here to my right, actually, following next with Rachel, and then Matt in the second line, and Khalid. And today we would like to talk a bit about the recent introductions that we had in the latest version, the 2020.2 release. And before we start with that, actually a very great news, and Maarten can actually share my screen, maybe. We recently also changed our licensing scheme a bit. So for folks who had the ReSharper Ultimate license, you can now actually use Rider in your team if you want to. It's very important for us also to always mention you don't actually need to convert your solution files or anything. So even if colleagues still prefer like Visual Studio, for instance, you could, if you like it, still use ReSharper. There shouldn't be any issues with that. If you like to read a bit more about the details, there's a blog post around there. And yeah, that's for the licensing stuff. Then we probably also have a bit of news about the .tools, and Maarten will cover.
Yeah, definitely. So as Matthias mentioned, the licensing has changed, which means that if you go with a .ultimate license, whether you're using ReSharper or Rider, you have the .tools as well. Not a lot of news this release. I think for most of the profilers in .cover, we've added ARM 64 support. So if you're running Linux, for example, on an ARM 64 device, then you can use .trace and .memory for that. We added some reporting to .cover, and yeah, the typical things that we add to .peak as the C# language evolves, we try to decompile those things as well. So I think that's pretty much it for this release there.
Okay, thanks, Maarten. Another thing we would like to mention is our new .NET guide. I mean, we were working actually a couple of weeks and months already on that, but recently we kind of made it live. Woohoo! And maybe Khalid can say a few things about that.
Yeah, maybe one of you guys has the link to it. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, the guides is really a place where, as developer advocates, we're looking to put tutorials and maybe tips around ReSharper and Rider and .NET specifically, where folks can kind of learn some of the basics. I've done a couple of tutorials there around the basics of ASP.NET and some other things. And today I'm going to be talking about some localization stuff, but I'm also going to put some of that content here on the guide. So there's a lot of good stuff here. I know we've also talked about potentially in the future accepting content from the community as well. So this is something we're investing in heavily, and would love to hear feedback from the community and the folks reading it. So if you're interested and just want a little bit more content around .NET, we encourage you to go to jetbrains.com/.net/guide. We'll leave a link to the guide in the show notes for this video as well. So I think that covers it pretty much, right?
Yeah, right. And also I must say what's really interesting with that guide, it's like usually we are also developers, right? But this is kind of a way for us to express our artistic vibes, let's say. So we have very different material. Also, lots of these things are translated into tweets. I also know some folks in the chat do love the tweets. We've seen a couple also making their own line of tweets. But yeah, really cool stuff about the .NET guide. Actually, to let you know about maybe also the very little known features that our IDE Rider or ReSharper actually has to offer. So that's it for the guide. Let's draw a bit of the outline for the rest of the presentation or party, actually. We will start with a couple of things about ReSharper. In that part, mostly Maarten will present us with a couple of new features. Then we switch over to Rider and ReSharper. So most of you probably know Rider is based on ReSharper. It's the engine running in the background. So for all the inspections and language features, mostly, ReSharper also runs inside Rider. And after that, we will be focusing mostly on Rider with a couple of debuggers things, tiny bits of Blazor. Khalid will also cover the localization. GitHub integration will be really interesting. I'm looking forward to see Rachel and Khalid showing you a bunch of things about that. NuGet additions. And Matt will close with the funny part, even more funny than the release party itself, with Unity and Unreal for game development.
So funny part. There's not going to be any jokes there. Don't want to get anybody's expectations up.
I will try hard to do some jokes. Okay. All right. So let's head over to Maarten, maybe.
All right. Sounds good. So yeah, this is Visual Studio with ReSharper installed, and yeah, we've added a number of things that you would expect, like new language support, nullable reference types, and so on. I think Matthias is gonna cover some of that. But one of the things that we've added as well is something that was probably one of the most requested features from folks who are using ReSharper, and it is cleanup on save. So the idea would be that whenever you press save, Control S, or use the menu or whatever you use to save your documents in Visual Studio, we would run code formatting for you. So the idea would be that I can mess up my code and, for example, move this around and change the layout of that. And once I save, this should automatically format. Now, I didn't enable it yet, so what I can do is go to the ReSharper settings, go to code cleanup. Where is it? There it is. And then from the settings, I can automatically run cleanup when we are saving a file. Now, when I enable this, all of a sudden, ReSharper will start reformatting files when I save something in Visual Studio, which is kind of nice. There's a couple of more interesting options there as well, which is that we can only change those things that are actually changed. So instead of reformatting the entire file, this option, what it will do is change only the changed parts of the file. So only the methods or properties or whatever that you've been updating in your code base.
That's really interesting, right? Because usually if you work in legacy code and stuff like that, it's something that you don't want to do if you make a little change to actually reformat like the whole file, and then the commits are rather how to say, messy.
Yeah, I think we've all seen those pull requests on GitHub that essentially rewrite the entire code base. These are not too pleasant, to be honest.
Yeah, right.
So Maarten, with that, it seems like that's really targeted towards like handling performance and being efficient in larger enterprise solutions, right? So if you're working on a 40, 50 project solution, this will help because it'll just format what you're working on, which is great. I know a lot of our users definitely work in those kind of environments. So this is really thinking about them, which is kind of cool.
There's a couple of other interesting things that you can do, and that is that in the cleanup profiles, you may notice, you may not notice, but you can actually create your own code cleanup profile. So in my installation here, I set reformat code as the default configuration, where it's going to be just reformatting of code and nothing more fancy. But what you can also do is, for example, duplicate this one and say that for my current solution, which is called space.net, call it space.net profile or something like that. What you can do is, for example, say that you want to update the file header or change the syntax style to use var everywhere, things like that, and then set that as a default. Now, what you can also do is then save this to a team shared settings file, which will also be checked into your source control system. And what will then happen is that everyone on your team will be using the same code cleanup profile and will have reformat on save enabled in their solution as well. So let's save this to our team shared settings. And if we now make some changes that make no sense at all, and we then save, ReSharper will actually reformat. But also note that I enabled this reformat only those bits that have changed since the last time, which is why this one did not change yet, for example. So you can change all those things, essentially tweak the entire feature to your liking and whatever you want to have there.
The crowd loves it, judging from the comments.
That is cool.
Maybe I'm getting a little ahead of ourselves, but you can check it into source control. Are these things that maybe people could run in their CI environment as well? Or am I getting ahead of ourselves here?
Yeah, you spoil my part, actually. But no worries. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so the short answer is yes. The longer answer is going to be wait for Matthias.
All right, I'm waiting. Right.
Okay, cool stuff. Yeah. Do we want to head over to peak actions?
Yeah, definitely. So Visual Studio has this thing where you can peak definition. So essentially, you can go to any type or whatever and get a preview of whatever you are referencing in the peak definition window. We added some other features to that as well. So for example, if you use Control-Alt and use your mouse wheel or Control-Alt-Q, what you will see is that instead of peaking definition, you can also peak usages. So for example, if I have this iPropagate property access path interface, I can Control-Alt-Q on that. And inside of that peak definition window, you will now see all of the usages of that specific type there. And you can go through them, click on them, look at what they are, and figure out what is happening in your code. So this is essentially a feature that is already in Visual Studio, but we're making it better by, again, adding some additional navigation so you don't have to switch documents, but you can use peak definition to navigate around your entire code base.
I see there's little dots up there too. It looks like there's some kind of paging that happens there.
Yeah, looks like it. It's actually the history of the things that we've been to. So if we started in batch, where we're actually at in the document as well, and we then go to the usages of that iPropagate property access paths, it's like breadcrumbs in a web page where you go back and forth between the things that you've been researching in your solution. And there we go. Too many usages of that one. Yeah, there we go.
That's very awesome stuff.
It's probably also interesting what other actions could be integrated there, right? Because we have a couple of other navigation features like showing extension methods, for instance, exposing APIs. So maybe at some point those will make it into this peak actions window as well.
That would be super cool if that happens. Yes.
Yeah. Really nice. Following next, if anyone has.
Yeah,
no one has any other questions.
There's more in ReSharper. So I know a lot of people, probably 50% of people hate this feature and 50% love it, but there is a spell checker in ReSharper. So what you can do is spell check your comments, spell check your code, and so on. And by default, all of that happens in, Respeller? All of that happens in English. Now, this feature has been around for a while, and you can install your own.
Okay, sorry. I have to raise a point of order here. It happens in American.
It's American English, yes. Yeah, not the Queen's English.
It's the only saying. What are you talking about?
You know. Was it traditional and simplified? Is that how it goes?
How dare you, sir?
Sorry, Maarten. Carry on, please.
We have a similar thing with Belgium, the Flemish part, and the Dutch-speaking part. So totally understandable, even though we're at a much smaller scale than the US and England or Great Britain. Right. So you can install your own dictionaries, and by default, in previous versions, those dictionaries would be global to your entire ReSharper installation. What you can do now is essentially dump a dictionary somewhere in source control, reference that one as a dictionary, and then all of a sudden, everyone in your team, again, using save to team shareds, will be able to access those things in your code base. So for example, we have the wonderful word pannenkoek. I think it's in this type. No.
Can you repeat that?
Pannenkoek. It's very similar in terms of roots with other languages and so on, but essentially it's pancakes in English. And we have our old spelling, which is without the N, and having that Dutch dictionary in there, we will see that we can replace this with the proper one, which is called pannenkoeken. So that's the plural of pancake. So that's there. If you have English installed, as well as Dutch, as well as German, as well as Chinese or whatever, all of those dictionaries will work together, and ReSharper will treat them all as something that you can use there. By the way, one thing that's maybe interesting to mention, if you have the Alt-Enter where you have that error, you don't have to actually go to ReSharper options to specify things. Once you have a typo, what you can also do is configure the respeller dictionaries from here, from within that Alt-Enter shortcuts, and then essentially go to the options and change those things. Similarly, you can add it to a user dictionary. For example, if this word is not known, you can save it to the team shared dictionary, and then everyone in the team will have that word that is not in any of the current dictionaries, which is kind of nice.
That was probably very annoying for folks before that change, because if you do proper DDD and you have to stick to your language which you develop for, then you would need to add all those terms to the custom dictionary. Also, I must add something very interesting. We also have Pannenkuchen, but it's Pfannkuchen in Germany. But you know what? It's funny because it means different. It means different things in the north and the south, and even in the west and the east. So,
I just want to know who's writing all this code to do with pancakes.
There's more words in the dictionary, Matt.
Actually, there is a pancake view for Xamarin. So there is someone writing a pancake-based open source project. So
there's bound to be a pancake JavaScript library as well. So
we have two questions from the audience, by the way. It goes back to the navigation. Mm-hmm. And that is, if I understand it correctly, it's not exactly related to the peak actions. But the first question is, and I think they both fit together. The first question is, can we filter usages of properties based on assignments and invocations, or reading, basically, read and write? And the second question is how to sort and group by first segment of namespace, for instance.
Those are all very good questions. Let's start with the first. So in peak definition, there's currently no way to do that grouping or see where usages are read or written to. What you can do, however, is use the navigate to shortcuts, and then, for example, find usages of symbol. And if you have this value properties, for example, you can then navigate to places where this is written or read from. So you can find those usages, and in this solution, that's going to be quite a number. But you'll see all of the usages are in there. And then you can start grouping by, for example, directory and file, which is not exactly the prefix that you wanted, but still might be useful to search, for example, in a certain folder that you have on disk. The other one is to search by project structure and essentially follow all of the folders that you have in your project and so on as well. So there's quite a number of filters that you can apply here. For example, only writes, which is only one, which is good for this class. Only reads will show you only the reads as well. So all of those things can be done from the find usages, from the results of find usages, for example.
What's the icon next to the group by dropdown?
This one.
Yes, that one's great. I love that. Click that.
Enable grouping by kinds. So what that one will do is group by read and write access. So show you both of those separately, but in the same window. So you don't have to filter explicitly for write usages or read usages, but you get all of them.
And if you do something like that on a type, you'll get things like object creation, usage, type parameter usage, and stuff like that. It's really cool, really useful. I wish it was on by default.
Yeah, we should change that. You have commit access, right?
I'll be right back.
Okay, I think Matt has a couple of minutes still until his funny part, so you can actually fix that in the meanwhile. But so far for the respeller, I think one last thing is left for ReSharper, which is unit testing.
Yeah,
new options, right?
That's also a ReSharper and Rider thing. So if you don't know, Rider and ReSharper share the same code base and a lot of the same features. So if you have your unit tests, that entire test runner in ReSharper as well as in Rider has essentially been rewritten. So first of all, one thing that we do is discover the tests outside of the Visual Studio process. I know we've been talking about moving ReSharper outside of Visual Studio process for a long, long time, and consider this as one part of that humongous effort of moving ReSharper outside of the Visual Studio process. But test discovery is now running outside. We've also added a couple things where you can change grouping. So for example, this one, by default, I think tests are grouped by projects, namespaces, and so on. What you can also do is group by, for example, nothing apart for duration. And there you will see that you can have slower tests and faster tests. And you will see that those tests are now being grouped by slow and fast. So if you have a unit test session that takes a long time, what you can do is filter by duration, and you will see the slow and faster unit tests. And then from there, you can, of course, navigate to the actual tests and then go and have a look at what that thing is doing. And this is a good reason for being slow, I guess.
I love those.
Maybe one more, and that is that you can change the timings for being slow and being fast. So by default, the slow one is less than 30 seconds. A fast one is less than 100 milliseconds. If you have things that you're doing, integration tests where you have to connect to a database or something, and you know that's going to take some time, you can go to the options, again, save as team shared as well. And from the test sessions, test settings, sorry, what you can do is change those timings to whatever accommodates your current project or current solution. So you can change those timings there.
Sounds good. Any more questions? I think from the comments we currently have none. So we can switch over to Rider ReSharper. That would make me the presenter. Maarten?
Let's go there.
All right. So I'm sure many of you have already heard about the nullable reference types. So probably the biggest feature since when was it? C#8, right?
Yeah, C#8.
But it's in continuous development. And I know there's a couple of things that I want to show you which are still from the version before 0.2, and that is if you're migrating your code base to use nullable reference types, then we already have a couple of quick fixes for you that will make this task easier. So for instance, if you have this constructor here, which receives a nullable middle name, and you still have the property type to string, then you will see this warning right here, which is possible null reference assignment. And through our convenient Alt-Enter shortcut, you can actually change that type to reflect the same as the constructor parameter. There are other places as well, of course. So here, for instance, this is a very good example for to mention that nullable reference types are still under development. So actually, this code, if I would comment that in, that should actually show a compiler warning, which is this one, for possible null reference return, because single or default could potentially return null value. And I think I missed to change it back before. But this is actually not the case, only if you have .NET 5 installed. But what I want to show you instead, so if we actually work with null just for as a showcase, then what you can do is to Alt-Enter again and use the quick fix to change the type of the method. And very interestingly here also, as with many of the ReSharper and Rider refactorings, that will also reflect in the in another place, which is the interface where the method is actually defined. So this will just adapt the return type in that place then as well. Couple of other examples is we also for the nullable enabled context, we now also take into account ReSharper annotations. So for those who haven't heard it, there are a couple of annotations that you can put on your methods, like can be null and not null. Roslyn annotations work very similar, but as I already mentioned, the framework or the base class library is not fully annotated yet. But with the new version, it will also make use of some of the ReSharper annotations, like in this case with the first or default thing. And we will still see that this can actually be null. And the inferred type is the string question mark or the nullable string version. If you introduce nullable reference types in your code base, then chances are very high that you're working with some parts of your API which are not yet annotated. And I think this is this part first. And this might be this method, for instance, where nullable context is still disabled. And to make that a bit easier, what we have is the pessimistic mode. So by default, that would not throw or not give any compiler error, at least if I'm not mistaken. So you can correct me. I just had a call with one of our developers who's implementing that stuff. And nullable reference types is really something that that is difficult to talk about, yeah, if you're not part of the compiler team probably. But if I go into my options here and I have this pessimistic mode setting and I save it to for that solution, then we can see that even this from the nullable disabled context, we get the assumption that this variable can actually be null, yeah, which is, yeah, I guess pessimistic mode is better than being too optimistic in that case. Okay, I quickly have to change it back to optimistic. Optimistic is also way better. Another thing that we have introduced is, or that we added to work with nullable reference types is, if we have an API which actually has JetBrains annotations, like in this case with the can be null attribute, and we have another method which works with generic type parameters, like in this case we have a method which chooses just one of them and we don't know exactly which, but we basically return T again. And from the outside, from where we actually use that, we might have a variable which has a safe value, like in this case, this is definitely not null, but we might also have an unsafe value where we don't know if it actually is null or not. It can be null. And now using that method, that information is transported through the type system, and we still get the alarm that this inferred value could be null. And we should take some measures to work with that. Like we could, for instance, do the dammit operator, right? This one. I confused it with Kotlin.
I like that it's called the dammit operator. So every single time you're coding, you can keep swearing essentially.
Is that actually official? The official name? I've kind of forgot.
I don't know. It's like the Elvis operator.
I think it's officially called something. I think it's officially called something boring like the null forgiving operator. But damn it, is much better.
Matt is right. Yeah, and shame on me because I wrote the blog post and I mentioned it there. But I also want to mention, or I do this afterwards. Maybe there's a blog post. We will put this in the descriptions as well afterwards. There's also a more elaborated blog post from Andre, who has been working on that feature, and we will share that afterwards or in the chat maybe also. Okay. Any more questions for that? I think not, right?
There are no questions on this.
There's maybe one more interesting fact. If you previously used the annotations, the JetBrains annotations, then it would be interesting to kind of automatically convert that to Roslyn annotations, right? Because with the JetBrains annotations, we were kind of limited because we didn't have influence onto the type system. I mean, actual type system. But with those, with NRT, it works a bit differently. And we are actually considering something for the 0.3 release to have some context actions that will help you to convert those to the Roslyn, how do you call it? Counterparts. Yeah. So that's it for the nullable reference types. I will switch over to, which is the right one. Probably forgot to open it. Or which one was it? This one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think no one asked questions because everyone knows exactly how all the nullability stuff works, right? Like
I'm the only one who doesn't know it. Apparently. Okay, give me a second. There I still have some glitches. Okay, the next thing is global tools. And for those who know me, they probably also know that I'm a huge fan of CI and CD and all that stuff. And wouldn't it be great to have the power of ReSharper also on your CI, right? Just same also with Roslyn analyzers probably. But speaking of ReSharper, that is totally possible. So we have these tools, which are the duplication finder, the what was it? The cleanup code tool or CLI, and the inspect code. So dub finder, like the name suggests, it will show you the duplications that it has found in your code base. Maybe later I will quickly show you the blog posts around that, or share them as well in the description. Cleanup code will also do what we usually do in our IDE to fix all the minor mistakes that we did in terms of code smells, let's say. And inspect code, I will use this as an example, because if we run that on our CI, then we have the big opportunity to have a like zero warning policy, for instance. We could establish something where we can only check in code if it has zero warnings. Whereas while you're still developing locally, we might allow warnings for you. And what I want to show you is we have this global tool, which is called, oh my gosh, I kind of forgot it, and I don't want to switch to my, let's see. Here it is. Sorry, I completely missed it. What I wanted to show is, this is the command line blog post. Sorry, I kind of forgot about that I had it open. And this is how it would look like in TeamCity. So you have this UI which shows you all your files where certain issues occur. And you also have the link to the actual line number. There are a couple of blog posts also for, let's look at dub finder. Dub finder also has this UI for TeamCity where you can see, so here's the duplicate, and then we have the one file which duplicates it and another file, and you can kind of very well read that inside TeamCity. Okay, moving back here, how we actually use that is like this. So we can copy that here. And then in our terminal, we can, great, I'm a master at copy paste. We just paste that inside our terminal. And for me, it's already installed. But the big news here is also that this works cross-platform now. So that wasn't the case before. But now that we have it installed, we can just use the JB global tool, which stands for JetBrains, and then inspect code. And I think I also have to define the solution file as well as the output file, which would be inspections, let's say, XML. And then after this tool has done its work, and I actually invoked it before already, just to let you see it, And now it was deleted. Okay, I didn't try that. I should have used a different output name maybe.
Well, I have a question for you while it's running, right? I think this is a great tool even for teams with multiple people using different development tools, right? I've always liked the philosophy of each developer gets their own tool set, but they're not forced to have anything on their machine. And this is clearly awesome for that, right? So if somebody wants to just be a Notepad elite programmer, you can still kind of apply this stuff onto them, which is really great. I also noticed that like you installed that tool globally, but with .NET Core 3.1, there are local tool manifests now as well. So that's pretty cool as well. So people don't have to install this tool globally on their machine, but they can still run it with each solution that has it installed. So that's very cool stuff.
Right, and that would be part of the build script, let's say, to just do a .NET tool restore in that particular repository, and then you don't need it globally. That's right, yeah. Going back, so now this XML has finished, and we can see a couple of warnings right here. This is usually something when it's better to have an actual report generated out of that. TeamCity does that out of the box. But yeah, that's it so far in terms of those global tools. So any other questions? If not, and I think I also didn't forget anything, then we can switch over to Rider. And I think it's Maarten again, right?
Yeah, debugging.
Debugging.
There's a couple of cool things that we've added to the Rider debugger, and one of them is data breakpoints. Now, one quick word of warning: data breakpoints only work on Windows right now, and there's only the option to add 4 of them in your code base because limitations in the runtime essentially. You may also wonder, what are they, data breakpoints? They are kind of the breakpoints that help you figure out where something is coming from. Typically, when you're developing, you'll add breakpoints wherever you know that you want to start execution or pause execution and inspect whatever is going on. But with data breakpoints, you can essentially set a breakpoint on a property or a field, and whenever that thing changes, the debugger will pause and you can see where that change is happening. So typically, if you have race conditions, if you don't know where a certain change is coming from, or you've been pulling out your hair because you were thinking like, why is this value not what I was expecting? Then data breakpoints may help. So what we can do is run this thing, and I have 3 different bank accounts in here, and I will also run some transactions there. And what I want to do is put a data breakpoint on the collection of transactions for account number 3, and I want to see when that thing changes. So what we're going to do is run this code, pause at any breakpoints, then look at the debugger watches, and let's look at the transactions. That's going to be a list, and a list has a count property, but also a size field. And what I can do there is set a data breakpoint. Once I do that, I can continue running my code, and what you will see is that when the size property or the size field changes, the data breakpoint will hit, and I'll be able to see where that is coming from. So we can see the previous value of the number of transactions was 1. The current value is 2. We can resume, but we can also look back in the stack frames and see where that change is coming from. So for example, we can see that this data breakpoint was hit because we hit the transfer from account number 2 to account number 3 there. So that's quite useful to figure out where a change is coming from instead of having to put breakpoints everywhere in your code base or use weird conditional constructs and so on. This is much easier to find those.
Yeah, I'm personally having flashbacks to looping through a for loop that's like 1,000 items long to get to like 998, right? So this is awesome. Like I never want to do that.
That's a good example, by the way. And this is not about what's new in Rider. That's been in there for a while. But what you can also do is on a breakpoint, the example that you had with a loop where you are interested in the 900th iteration of that loop, what you can do is change the breakpoint and set the hit count to be, for example, greater than or equal to 998, something like that.
Very cool. Yeah, I think for me, it's like the flashbacks are to moments where you know something in the loop changes the data, but you just don't know where it's changing, right? Like you're trying to find that elusive bug that you can't really find. So very awesome stuff. Very cool.
Absolutely. There's another really cool thing, and I'm going to switch solutions there, and that is that we now have pin to frame as well. So what you can do is essentially put some favorites in terms of fields, in terms of properties, and so on, and have those things show first in the debugger. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to calculate the entire size of my NuGet packages folder on my disk. That should take a while because there's lots of packages on my disk. So let's run this code. And what we'll see is that we'll pause, of course, at the first breakpoint that we have there before we actually start calculating the size. And what you will see is that we can change some things. So for example, in directory, if we are interested in the attributes of that directory, we can favorite this one, essentially, pin to the stack frames here. And what you will see is that now attributes is the first and only thing that you see in the editor, but also that this thing is always going to be the first item that you see in the variables view. We could do the same thing with the full name of the path and so on and get that as the first thing. And you also see it change inside of the editor. Now, this has been around for quite a while. The more interesting thing is that we can also pin to frame. So if we run this thing, we will start calculating the size of folders recursively. So we will essentially call calculate size in here for every subdirectory that we have on our disk. And what we can do is pin our directory. And what you will see is in the next iteration we do, that pinned item is also going to show in the stack frames there. So every single time you step into the iteration and every single time you step deeper into that recursive pattern there, you will see which folder you are currently evaluating, which is kind of nice if you have lots of recursive calls and you want to see what is changing and which iteration you are looking at. Also, for example, if you want to see what the value was when you are analyzing .NET X units, you can click on that stack frame and then look at what the values were there. So that's really cool and useful.
Yeah, can I add something too, Maarten? There's this little button in the debugger window right next to memory, right? So there's constant times where I'm kind of code splunking. I'm like trying to figure out what the code does, but then I get lost, right? I forget where the execution point was. I love clicking that. Like it's so cool once you've like opened up 20 files to just click that and get back to where you started from. So the debugger in Rider has gotten really, really good. I find it's top notch. So very awesome stuff.
Cool.
Yep.
I actually did not know about this one. It's
See, you learned something.
In the toolbar, but we're all learning here. Cool.
Very cool. Hey, if I can teach Maarten something, I've succeeded today. So I think that's pretty cool.
I also must say, in the recent past, I was preparing some of the tweets around the debugger, and those are probably the most loved ones in terms of if I compare with other features that we show through our Twitter account, and they're also really cool to actually show. I mean, yeah.
I know when I retweeted the one where you can break on multiple statements within a single line, I think a lot of people are surprised by that, you know.
With a smart step into.
So I mean, if folks can follow Matthias or follow the Rider Twitter account to see some of those tips. Those are some really nice tips. So, by the way, that sounded weird. Anyways,
those are good tips. Yeah.
Yeah.
So pin to frame. Yeah,
that.
That's it. I think next, if you're finished, Maarten, next is Blazor app. And I think that's for Khalid, right?
Yeah. So let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, you're up.
Yeah. So I know Blazor is something a lot of people are interested in. If you're not really familiar with what Blazor is, it's a new programming paradigm developed by the folks on the ASP.NET team. So if you're familiar with web client frameworks like Vue.js, which is one of my personal favorite, or React, it's another way of building rich web client UIs. The nice thing is there's a couple programming models, which I'll talk about here once I start Rider. But currently the one that's supported the most is server-side Blazor, which the UI is built using C#, and then the front-end client-side talks to the back-end through utilizing Signal R, I believe. So let's go ahead and start Rider. So pop up here. So I'm using the latest version of Rider, Rider 2020.2. And to just start a Blazor app, I'll just click New Solution. And one of the nice things about Rider for me is it looks at the templates that are installed locally on your machine. So with .NET Core 3.1 and even .NET 5, which is still going through some iterations, but you can kind of work with .NET 5, but we don't recommend it. You just come in here and you pick ASP.NET Core Web Application out of the .NET Core category. And then you can pick the type. So here we can see Blazor Server App and Blazor WebAssembly App. Like I mentioned, if there are templates out there for Blazor applications, you can install them and Rider will actually find them. So there's all the templates that you can start from the command line. Rider will find them. So I'm just going to go ahead and start a simple Blazor application. So, oh, I called it web application. I was gonna call it something fun. Maybe I should have let the people watching name it, but maybe we'll say that for a party next time. But anyways, as you can see, here is our Blazor application. You can see that Rider is noticing things and giving us hints. Additionally, too, sometimes I'll like play around with the highlight level and turn things on and off. So this is a really nice feature I think the team has added. It definitely makes my life as a DevRel advocate a lot easier. So do that. The other thing, too, you can kind of see the on-click event here. And if I was to command click, it actually takes me to the method. So we get all that kind of stuff. This page isn't necessarily that interesting. One of the more interesting pages is the fetch data page in this sample. And you can kind of see all the code highlighting. And, you know, we have HTML also syntax highlighted, which is pretty cool. So you're getting the full power of the ReSharper Rider engine working with Blazor. And we can do things like jump to, oh wait, this is a declaration, but we can jump to the type from our Blazor pages, which I think a lot of people will appreciate. Seeing that this is a server-side Blazor app, and here we can see kind of the breakpoints, what we were talking about earlier with multiple line statements. I'll just go ahead and put it in all. So anything that hits this line will break on. And we can go ahead and run and debug this application. So, and should pop up soon. By the way, shameless plug, I wrote a really cool blog post that should be out soon about running Blazor in an Electron app. So keep an eye out for that on the JetBrains blog. So I'm excited about that one. But
that reminds me that I should publish another post today.
Well,
okay, I will follow both of you, all right?
So if we go back to Rider, we know that we put a breakpoint here in our get forecast async. And if I jump back to Chrome, hit fetch data, we can see that we're debugging, right? We hit this breakpoint, which is really cool. Like, I know a lot of people are starting to use Blazor. I know that we're investing heavily in making sure testing frameworks like BUnit work. I know that that library right now targets .NET 5, and that's something we're hoping to put a little bit more effort into. So there are those kind of things that I know the community around Blazor is really growing. But as you can see, we can just kind of go through. I'm in the breakpoint now and just kind of continue. All right, I get it. And then we can go back to the page. And yeah, that's Blazor in a nutshell. I mean, there's really good support right now. I know it was touch and go a little bit at the beginning. But it's a really good experience right now inside of Rider. So anyone who's thinking about getting into Blazor, I definitely recommend it. It's a really fun and exciting way to build web clients and web client UIs. So yeah, that's Blazor in a nutshell. So
okay, cool stuff.
Yeah.
One serious question, I think people like your background.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is very cool.
Yeah, you need to share your background at some point. Yeah.
Well, this background is a bit of a hack because it's actually ReSharper, but I changed the hash.
Yeah, I know.
So this is black market JetBrains wallpaper. I don't know if
I'm one of the lucky ones who actually got this as a shirt, and it was also interesting. Maybe we can a little vote in chat if people think if that's a cat or an owl or a meow.
Yeah,
meow.
So if you don't know, go Google meow after this party because
right afterwards.
We need your attention now. But after this, go look up a meow, and your lives will forever be changed for the positive, I think.
All right. I think, Khalid, you have another thing, which is localization. Localization manager, right?
So this is a bit of a tangent, but if folks don't already have the toolbox installed, you really should. Because for me, one of my favorite features is being able to launch Rider right from any command line. So normally I run iTerm, which is a terminal window for macOS, and I launch a lot of my projects right from the console. So if I do
with Quake mode, even right?
Yeah,
coming from the top.
I love Quake mode. So I'm going to close Rider just to show there's no tricks. So if I do Rider dot in the command line, it launches Rider. And by the way, this is faster if you already have Rider open. And the cool thing is Rider actually can scan the directory and find a solution file. So if you have a CSproj or a solution file, Rider will ask you, do you want to open this as a directory or just open the solution? I actually ran Rider dot accidentally in a root directory with multiple solutions, like solution folders. And Rider was smart enough to scan and find all of the solution files. So like, if you have a root directory that has 100 solutions, Rider will also list those out. I found that out the other day. It was kind of nifty. In Rider, in the current version of Rider, we actually released a localization manager tool. So localization in .NET has been around since .NET 1, and it's kind of stayed largely unchanged for the most part. You still have resource manager, you still have resource files with the resx extension, and those files are normally, here, I can show you. Those files are normally XML. Let me see if I can actually open the XML. Yeah, so this is XML. Nobody really wants to work in here. I mean, unless you're a glutton for punishment, which is fine. I'm not judging you, but if that's what you want to do, you can actually work in XML here. We also have some enhancements here that show you where these values are overridden inside the XML. So now you can kind of jump to the correct culture right from XML. The truth is, though, you don't want to do this. I do not recommend you do this. This is not fun. But you know what is fun? The localization manager. See that segue? What is fun is the localization manager inside of Rider. So here we can see all of the cultures that this solution supports. Currently, we have our default culture, which in my case is just English, proper US English. And then we also have German and Japanese. So the cool thing is we can see each translation in each culture right in this editor. We can also add new cultures. Let me see if I can, yeah. So you can actually filter down. So if you don't want to see the German stuff in here because the grid's really big, you can kind of remove that, which is really cool. Let me see. You can add a new culture. So if I wanted to add a new culture, we have this drop down. We can add Arabic, which I can speak, humble brag, but I could add Arabic if I wanted to here and translate my application. Ooh, Kuwait. So you can do that. That's fine. You can actually also see where your resource files are here in this Explorer here on the left. And you can kind of toggle them as you choose. So very cool stuff there. The interesting part about localizing in ASP.NET is while Resource Manager and resource files are still at the core of localization, there are some new features in ASP.NET Core around iString localizer, iHTML localizer, and iView localizer. And this project is on GitHub. If folks want to go look at that and how to set up localization, you can walk through this project and kind of figure out what you need to do. Some of my other features, and you have to have your hints kind of turned up the whole way, but you can, let me see if this will work. All right. So Rider will actually let you, did I do this wrong? Let's see. I guess this is not finding it here, but Rider will actually give you hints as to what strings you can localize and pull out into your resource files. That can be done, I believe, in here. And this is kind of the format that you use to handle the localizer. Right now, I'm injecting iString localizer and iHTML localizer, but for the most part, most people should be using iView localizer. And here, let's see.
And actually, I will quickly mention that Rider is now the second product that we have, which introduced the localization manager. ReSharper already has it since the 0.1 release in this year. And now Rider basically just catched up, right? In most regards. I think Khalid actually wrote a blog post about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely recommend people go see the blog post, but for the most part, Rider definitely works really, really well. And the localization manager is an awesome addition to Rider. This grid layout makes it super easy to see, you know, where the translations are. You can do things like export to CSV. So if you have a bunch of professional translators, which is always recommended because language idioms can kind of change, you can export to CSV. You can have your professional translators translate these placeholders and then re-import them back into resx files as well. So I think that stuff's really cool. There's show problems. So if there are translations missing, you can kind of see. Right now I'm being pretty good and I have all of them kind of translated. And you can see if there's like, you know, localizable string resources. So just to kind of show people how this actually works in practice, I'll go ahead and run this web application. All right. And here we go. Here is our localized ASP.NET Core. applications currently in English. We can switch to German. We can switch to Japanese. And yeah, it all kind of works, which is kind of cool. It's super cool.
All right.
Yeah.
Localization manager. Next thing, I think, if there are no questions, I haven't seen anything in the chat. Next thing is, I think, GitHub integration. For that, we would need to switch to Rachel. Rachel, are you ready? You're still muted.
Yep, ready, unmuted.
Yeah? Okay.
We good? Okay, so
Okay.
how about I use that localization sample of Khalid's, and we'll go ahead and fork it and do some things in GitHub. So right from GitHub, we have to do our forks. So I will do that and let it go do its little thing. Interesting animation here. So there's a lot of great GitHub features in Rider. Now that I have it, if you happen to have the Chrome or Firefox extension for the toolbox that was already mentioned, you could use these cool little buttons to clone your repo, and it'll just clone it and open it up right in Rider. So I'm going to do that. You can also do WebStorm, IntelliJ, or PHP Storm. So I'll go ahead and say, yeah, I'll open that. And it might take it a minute. Obviously.
But that's a time saver, right? Otherwise, you would need to go to the welcome screen first and choose
and you'd have to
clone
open up
from
something and then go to the VCS menu and all of that stuff. So this does save time. If you already have Rider open, also it's kind of nice as well. So right away, it's asking me what I want to do. Do I want to clone? Yes, I think I will.
I will add to Rachel that you'll only see buttons for IDEs that you actually have installed. So you're not gonna, if you're Java averse, you're not going to see IntelliJ there. So fret not C# family and F#.
So there's nothing wrong with a bit of Java now and then.
No, but we're done.
Kotlin,
people,
obviously.
we can't admit that.
But I even think, I mean, it's a question to you, to all of you. I'm not exactly sure, but I think even if you have it checked out already locally, cloned, then it will open the existing one, right? I mean, if it was once opened, at least, as far as I know.
Yeah, it's pretty smart like that. So here you can see the remotes. So I do have a remote set for that. I'll want an upstream one later, but we'll let Rider automatically set it for me, although I could go ahead and set it in here if I wanted to. So I'm pretty good. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and make a branch. So I'll go to my GitHub menu and branches. And as you see, some of these have shortcut keys as well. And I can do my new branch. Click create. And because I'm on Windows, I get that little Windows Defender message. I'll just dismiss that. Has nothing to do with GitHub per se. And this tells me down at the bottom, it has checked out a new branch from head. So I can go ahead and make some changes and we'll see what's in here. I'll just grab that error page. So somebody must work for the Department of Redundancy Department. An error occurred. Let's change that up a bit.
I know we were joking earlier, Rachel, but we were going to ask the users if they think an error happened.
Do you think has an error occurred? I'm not going to force it on you. I'm going to ask. We're polite here. Has an error occurred while you're processing? So now I've made that change, and then I'll go ahead and commit that. So again, I could use my VCS window. You can also use some other options like right-click on the solution and things like that as well. It just depends on how you want to do it. But using the menu here, you get to see all the options each time, which is great for learning and demoing. So go ahead and commit. And I need a commit message. So that's better than most, which is just made a commit.
Stuff happened. Things changed.
But by the way,
Mods.
one little tip: instead of going to the menu bar,
Yeah.
Rachel, I think you can also. I mean, depends on your key map, but I think
Yep.
you can also type Control, Alt, and Q.
Yep.
Can you try that?
Yep. Yep. So
Control,
you get
Alt.
all the nice operations
Yeah,
right
exactly.
off of the Control
I mean,
Alt Q as
yeah,
well.
if people are more keyboard driven, then this is also a good way to where you see you also have some things blurred out or not grayed out, which actually don't work currently, but that's also great for learning.
Yep. So you have both ways, but I like kind of showing the menu sometimes because then everybody could see kind of the full deck of what's available in here. You'll notice that there is a pull requests window. If I had pull requests in here, I could see them. I don't have anything, so even when I click refresh, I don't really get anything. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and create one. So I'll just come down here and do a create pull request. And here's where it asks me, oh, hey, you need to configure that remote because you only have your remote that's for origin, you need the upstream. So sure, thanks, Rider. You can do that for me. And here I can customize it, make sure I know what fork I want and branch and all that good stuff. And it sets that remote for me, and then it will go ahead and create the pull request, except for this time, I think maybe, oh yeah. So we were playing around with this before and making some updates and things, and so now it's just giving me a little bit of a to-do because my branch is behind. So Khalid, you should be able to go in there and knock that out for me, right?
So Rachel, interesting thing. So in the pull request window, we're actually filtered to only look at open pull requests. But if you were actually to remove that filter, which says state open,
yes.
You'll actually see where Rachel and I were playing around. I think you have to press enter.
Hold on a minute. Let's take a look here. There we go. Yeah, our disaster 2020. And another one. Yeah, so we're a little bit behind on one of these. I guess last time we did it, it didn't get accepted or something when we were messing around. So
yeah, I wonder what we pushed that was kind of weird, but
right.
But you can kind of see here where Rachel and I went through the review process right inside of Rider, which is pretty cool. You can do things like put suggestion blocks, which is really nice. On the left-hand side, you can see that there's also a checkout label. So if I was, reviewing this on my machine and wanted to actually commit something to Rachel's PR, I can check out her branch and make the changes inside of Rider and push them back up to her branch as well. So yeah, try to create the pull request now. You're probably just a little behind.
Yeah, I did a pull, so we'll see if this picks it up this time. I just told it to accept the last thing that was in there so you could see that.
Oh, you know
what it is
from
before.
I wonder if you named the branch the same exact thing, potentially.
Did I? I don't remember what I named it before.
Yeah.
That's possible. Oh, there we go. No, it was just that that might have been it, naming it the same, and then I got behind. So I told it to go ahead and overwrite it with what was out there already. In this case, it didn't really matter what we did. It's just a demo, but I could have accepted my own or that one, and I did. So here you see it is successful. So I can click on that. If I do that, that should launch a browser. My computer's being a little slow. Oh, there we go. And then I could see that. There you could see some of the tracing from the PR.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
No actual information. That's every commit message ever, right? No actual information in it that helps you.
Yeah, if you were to switch to my screen, I can show people the process, right?
Yes.
Khalid can...
Just so you see, there's a whole tracing in here, the whole conversation. You could actually come in here and click reply or resolve and interact right in here, as well as buttons depending on the context, or reopening and pushing and doing all the, approving changes, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, go ahead, switch over, and then they can see your part of it, what you see.
So let me know when folks can see my screen. Okay, very cool.
Yep.
So
All good.
if you're familiar with filters inside of GitHub, you can come in here, and type any filter. You can say like tags or labels. I think it's labels, but yeah. So if you're familiar with that, you can see that here. You can see that Rachel's pull request, Rach branch. I think that's like a salad dressing, right? I don't know, but I can come in here. I can see her pull requests. I can assign myself as a reviewer. So now there's a requirement that I complete a review. I can assign it to Rachel, and I can also add an enhancement label. So you can kind of see all that as well. So I can go through, I can look at the commits. I can see what files have changed. You can change. Right now, I'm looking at the unified viewer, but we can go side by side if that's easier, or you can go back to unified. You can do things like ignore white space, highlight words, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I can see that we don't know is on this line, and I can come over here, and I believe, let's see. Oh, wait, I'm on the commit. So if I was to come in here, I can actually click in the gutter and say start a review with a comment. And I can say, looks good to me, Rachel. Awesome. So now I've left this message and this button lights up here. I can say, let's push this to production. Users will love it. Hearts. This is 15 years of experience. That's how I got good at emojis, I think. So I can hit here and I hit approve. And now I've approved Rachel's PR. I can come back here, look at the pull requests. Let me see. I can close this, refresh. Did I approve and merge it? No. Where'd it go? Did I accidentally close it? Oh wait, this is on your thing. So we can switch back to Rachel and she can kind of show the process and what it looks like on GitHub as well. So you can see right now on GitHub that my review went through and it's approved. And
yep, I was on mute again. Sorry.
So Rachel, if you go back into Rider, you can see the merge button right at the bottom. I think this is our previous pull request. We want to go back to. So if you go to the pull requests at the top.
Yeah.
Back to list.
Back to list, yeah.
It gives it a nice new blank.
Yep. So now at the bottom, you can kind of see the merge buttons and the close pull request button as well. So go ahead. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you merge it in. So there we go.
Cool.
So
there we go. Nice little hash and everything.
Yeah, very cool.
Okay.
Okay. That was it for pull requests. Next is me again with some NuGet stuff. Not much, actually. Maarten, have you shared my screen? I don't see it, unfortunately.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah? Okay.
Demo time.
So one thing we extended is the NuGet tool window. So often it's very interesting to know what kind of package not only have we installed which is the first two, and we can confirm that inside our let's see, inside our project file, but also which package files or which packages do get included implicitly. And that's an addition in the latest version. So here we have a list of implicitly installed packages. By the way, someone is still not muted from the previous ones. And further, we can also, if we hover above one of those items, I mean, it should actually, but for me, sometimes it's a bit, how do you say, stubborn. Usually that might be just my current setup. But usually if you browse, sorry, it was here. Or was it here? No, usually if you move your mouse above them, there should occur a tooltip which shows you basically through which of the actually installed packages this one is installed implicitly. We also have a new Alt-Enter way of working with those installed packages. So we can choose to upgrade, downgrade. We can see the quick NuGet documentation, it's called, just like the quick documentation in code. Let's do this again. Quick NuGet document. Come on. Yeah, you can see something is not right with my tooltips because it's disappearing way too fast now. Which version is installed, which versions are available, etc. on different feeds. Also, of course, we can quickly move to the NuGet website, actually, to, I don't know, see recent releases maybe, or get some more information. We can browse to the GitHub page, which is all information that is actually packed inside the NuGet package. Also, that's some of the, I think that was in the 0.1 release, we can find dependent code in our whole solution. So if I do that, I actually didn't try it before, but let's see. We can see for what was the Tweetinly, I hope I pronounced that correctly, but it's a Twitter client library. We can see here are a couple of places where the API is actually used. So let's go back to the NuGet tool window again. A couple of other additions we have. Let's check the Alt-Enter menu again. So we can also copy the package name, for instance. And by the way, this is just like any other of the tool windows that we have, not tool windows, but pop-up menus. We can actually search here. So if I type GitHub, then the items that are shown will get reduced to that search term to just have a quick way of doing things. And also you can see we have here on the right-hand side, we have the shortcuts shown based on your actual key map, which you are using, or navigating to the Assembly Explorer, for instance. Another thing is often, and that is especially if you're trying out NuGet packages, for instance, then it's often the case that you want to test them locally. And for that, you add, let's say, a NuGet feed, which is local to your system. But this one might actually be a different one. I mean, it might have been moved or something, or you deleted it to have a clean build or something like that. If we, for some reason, search for a package which you are expecting to be on some local feed, and it won't be, and it's not found in any of the other, then you will also get an actual warning inside that window. So for instance, we can check this, do a very long blah, then you can see that we can't fetch packages for the new feed. And if we go here, then we can see it's actually that one that might be the faulty feed on our local system. Another addition, I think, let's see where it is we can change some of the most meaningful properties for NuGet. So we can change the global packages folder or the local packages folder. This one is, I think, prior to, I mean, the old project files. It's the local one, global, whereas it's the one for the SDK-based project files. Yeah, I think that's it. maybe one more thing, but that's not entirely related to NuGet. What we also added is if you go to, I mean, ReSharper users probably already know that, but if you go to your project and you have some other references, then we can choose to remove unused references. As far as I know, but I might also be wrong, but I didn't have time to actually ask again. But as far as I know, it's not for NuGet packages. So just for actual assembly references that you add there. Okay, I think that's it for NuGet. And that brings us to the funny part again. Matt, with Unity and Unreal.
You need to stop calling it the funny part. I've got no jokes here. This is just, it's just, you can say it's the fun part because it's games and things, but that's it. So, but yeah, Unity stuff. We've got a whole bunch of really cool things in here for Unity, which is really nice. I'll rattle through a couple of them. The big one, the first one, of course, is shader support. I like this one because we've been asked for it for a while now, and we've been wanting to provide it, but to do it, it's kind of like the most epic yak shaving thing ever. To get shader support, we've had to port manage C++ to Mac and Linux, which is kind of bonkers. The way we've built shader support is that we've actually brought in ReSharper C++ into Rider. And in fact, we're kind of making that into a whole product at the moment with the Unreal support for Rider as well. So we're getting Unreal support in Rider as a C++ package. And as part of that, we get shader support because shaders are a dialect effectively of C with include files and preprocessors and all that kind of nonsense as well. And it is great because it's based on C. We get to take advantage of a whole bunch of sort of C-type things. So we've got Alt-Enter, we've got Navigate to, can navigate to declarations, highlighting of the references as they go around. There's even refactorings as well, so I can rename that color, R22, and it'll update. So there's a whole load of support immediately built in. We will follow includes as well, so I can control click and navigate into include files. And this one's cool as well because this is this isn't an include which is part of the project. It's one of the default includes that ships with Unity. So we kind of have taught Rider where to find some of these include files as well. So that's pretty useful. And you've got all sorts of...
That's why we had hippie completion before, right? I remember that.
Yeah, absolutely. We had hippie completion, which just completed the words which are existing in the file. Now we've got sort of proper completion here now. So, if I bring up completion for these things, it shows me the types that are in there. We've got proper semantic support, basically. It's a huge leap over what we had before. What we had was, sort of text editor level support, syntax highlighting based on recognizing keywords and the same as you say, hippie completion. But now we've got a proper semantic model built on top of ReSharper C++. Which is really cool. It's really useful. Gonna quickly sort of skip on from that there. So yes, refactorings is also one of the important things to point out with the shader support. It's not just the semantic model, it's got refactorings and things in there as well. We've got a couple of useful things with the debugger. The first bit of that, which I really like, is a thing called pause points, which I like a lot. If I switch over to Unity, and if I'm already connected with the debugger. If I just start playing this game, I've got a breakpoint set up here, and I can right-click on it. I can show things. I've got a hit count available there. Hit count is equal to 2. This is a different kind of breakpoint. So normally when you hit a breakpoint, your code execution stops, and you're there in Rider, looking at the call stack, looking at the variables and the watch items you've got listed there, and the thing you are debugging freezes. Now, Unity is a C# application, so Unity itself freezes and you can't do anything with it. What a pause point does is it flips that on its head. So if I just run this now, and if I start a game and start the wave, once two enemies have spawned, I hit my pause point and it switches Unity into pause mode, but it's still interactive. I can still work with it, and I can do crazy things. I can select the visuals, move the enemy itself, and switch it back into play mode. And as you say, as it comes into thing there, we've now got the thing working along there. So this sort of flips it around. It's really cool. Instead of having to freeze your Unity editor, you can now get to work with the Unity editor based on conditions of a pause point, of a breakpoint, effectively. And what's really cool with that is you get things like the hit counts. You've got the dependent breakpoints as well. So I can say only pause once this bit of code has happened before, or when a condition happens when, I don't know, wave equals 3 or something. So
yeah, I loved talking about that feature when doing the Unity presentations, because this dependent breakpoint is very cool. If you like have a method which gets called like every frame, but you only want to stop it if a certain block was hit in the game or something, then you can do it with dependent breakpoints.
Yeah, I could do something like agent instance. I think its name, is it? Dot name equals boss or whatever. So only switch into pause mode when the agent that gets spawned is one of the bosses that you got to defeat. It's really cool. It's really useful. A couple of other small useful debugging things. We've done a bunch of work around working with devices. And so now you can see USB devices you can connect to your Apple device. If I just go to attach to Unity process there, it shows me everything that we've got that I can debug on my local network, but it also includes my my iPhone. Doesn't support Android yet, hoping to get that into the next version. But here now you can sort of debug via USB. And you can debug any kind of device there. So it also works with consoles like Xbox and PlayStation, which is cool. If you just happen to have a dev kit lying around your house, which is good. And the other debugger thing, which I want to show you, is this one here, which is the debugger value extensions. Hard to know quite what to call that. In fact, let's just switch over to here and let's show this working. Let's come out of play mode. Swap back into play mode and hit the. No, come on, wake up, Unity.
I was
hit
starting to
level
worry
select. Hey, what are you saying?
I said I was starting to worry about your tower. All those enemies were piling up.
It's fine. I got plenty of towers. They're good. We can work with this. What we've done with the debugger here is really cool. Is we've extended it. We've got extra values being shown here. So we've got this active scene item here. This is like having an automatic watch variable. I could add something in here. I could do this dot options menu and add my own variables. But this is one which we kind of add automatically. It shows you what the active scene is. And if you expand it out, then you also get to see what game objects are attached to that scene. And again, you could try and get all of this stuff sort of by evaluating expressions and calling the right methods and things. But we just bring this sort of front and center. So we could then expand this out and sort of dive down into the children here. And you get to see a view of the hierarchy, such as what we've got displayed in Unity itself. And you can even see sort of attached components to it as well. And on top of that, then we pull out more information to display in the debugger itself. So normally when you see a transform, you don't get to see any information here in the debugger, but now Rider's been taught how to show you the position, the rotation, and the scale. That's a particularly boring transform of pictures there, but you get the idea. There we go. There's a more interesting one. And it gets you to show you the information and shows you front and center. A couple of other things, just to switch back up here. We've got the first set of work to go with the DOTS stack, the data-oriented tech stack, which has got a thing called Burst in there. There's a Burst compiler, which is a sort of post-processing compiler that will go over your compiled C# and rewrite the IL to be much more efficient and work a whole lot faster. But then there are certain conditions that your code has to obey. You can't have a for each statement. You can't have try catch. You can't use a whole bunch of things. It's very restricted, but that allows them to recompile the code to be much more efficient. Normally, you would only see those errors at runtime or a compile time in the editor itself. We will show it to you as you type, so that's good. So right now, we've got a whole bunch of analysis of methods which are being compiled in a burst context. And it sort of propagates as well. So any methods you call from a burst context will also get checked. And next version, we're going to introduce some quick fixes as well to help working with that. Other smaller features then, bulk fixes. So we've had a whole number of quick fixes for a few years now, actually. This one here, for example, is convert to compare tag to use an API which uses less memory. And we've been able to do that with the Alt-Enter menu. In this release, we've gotten them converted to bulk actions, so you can run them across the solution all at once and fix your code up straight away, which is very nice. And we've got integrated Unity YAML merge support, which is really nice. So when you are pulling down changes from Git and you need to merge some code, then Rider will automatically use Unity's merge tool to work with the scenes and assets to try and have a smarter merge rather than just a plain text-based merge. There are a number of other sort of useful features in this release as well. A whole bunch of performance work for working with Unity assets. So we index all of your assets, and we've done a whole load of work to reduce the memory usage and the throughput, so that's going to be faster and less resource intensive. We've also added a custom dictionary. So we were talking about the Respeller dictionary earlier. We've added that into Rider as well. And it's worth pointing out that the Rider plugin is also available for ReSharper. So ReSharper can have Unity features as well. And what else have we got in there? A bit of code cleanup, recognizes certain Unity constructs, that's the word I'm looking for, such as serialized fields and the event functions, and it will order those in code cleanup and allow you to then change the file layout with that as well. And that's probably it for Unity. It's worth pointing out, as I mentioned before, we've got Unreal Engine in progress as well. So we've got Rider C++, which is bringing the ReSharper C++ engine into Rider. Right now, and we're kind of focusing this on Unreal Engine, so we kind of have Rider as our game dev IDE, and Rider for Unreal Engine is a standalone product at the moment. We're going to roll it into Rider as a whole at a later point, but we've got them separate now, so we can have separate release cycles and release a new version of Rider for Unreal as we're working with it. We've just released a recent version of the preview to include all of the features that we've got in Rider. Standard Rider for 2020.2. That's all now in the Unreal preview as well. It's got a whole bunch of extra support for Unreal Engine projects, such as blueprint support. So very similar to how we're working with Unity assets. We also look inside a Unity blueprint and have those shown up on the editor instance for you. And you can go to jetbrains.com/LP/Rider Unreal to sign up for that. And there's a whole bunch of information going on there for that. And finally, I guess if you want any more details about what's changed in Rider for Unity, we've got all of the codes on JetBrains /ReSharper Unity GitHub, and we've got a changelog which lists all of the different changes that have been for 2020.2. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. And that kind of finishes me up. I don't know if we have any questions or comments about Unity.
Not regarding Unity nor regarding Unreal.
Okay.
I think not. But that was pretty funny, Matt. Thanks.
I'll work on the jokes for next time.
I encourage everyone watching to also check out the more dedicated hands-on presentations regarding Unity and Unreal, because we kind of make a very broad cover here. So yeah, it's also a bit shorter in terms of what Rider actually can do for Unreal and Unity.
Yeah, Unity support is very specific, and there's a lot to it. So there's a huge amount of functionality for Unity.
Yeah, I think
if you want to dive deeper.
Yeah, I think the normal presentations are like 1 hour long, right? That you do.
Oh, easily. I could have taken up all this time to talk about Unity.
Yeah.
With jokes.
With jokes. Okay, so that's it for the content part. We still have 2 slides, which Khalid maybe can share, which will be around our roadmap, very, very broad information we want to give you about our roadmap for ReSharper 22.3 and Rider 22.3. Or 2020.3, sorry. It's very hard to actually say that.
So can you actually see the slide?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, so
ReSharper is my part, actually. So let me go with ReSharper. Kind of didn't talk about who goes first. So ReSharper will be mostly we will look into .NET 5 and C#9, of course, as with all the other releases that we do. So language features, some parts are also covering something like the decompiler, for instance, so to see attributes and static local functions, for instance. We will also continue with out of process, and yes, this is taking very long actually, but it's also a very large thing to do. We try to keep you up to date with that. One thing I can say about that is that the most part of the architectural refactoring has finished now. And what we're looking at now is basically to move all the features to this async new model, which we have introduced. And the interesting part about that is also that this task can actually be parallelized. So the architectural refactoring is mostly a step-by-step thing, very sequentially, whereas now we have the opportunity to actually parallelize things. Command line tools, I covered that briefly, but command line tools will probably be able, I mean, I say probably because not everything that's shown here is a commitment. It's rather something that we will work on actively, but it might be later releases as well. But for command line tools, it will be that we try to revive the opportunity that you can pass plugins through the command line, which was available at some point, but due to our architectural difficulties, it kind of died for a little while. Inlay hints will be a very interesting one because we realize that inlay hints are not always very helpful, especially if the code you're reading is already well written. Then inlay hints for types, for arguments might be not necessary. But we're working on something which is called, or the name is actually not determined yet, but something like push to hint. So you can push a button and only then it will show the actual hints. So if you work with legacy code, then you can push that button and it will show the inlay hints. Whereas if you work with your own code, which you're familiar with, then you might not need it. Fuzzy search will be interesting because most of our searches are probably for exact matches. So we kind of have to do the fuzzy part ourselves. We have to go back and forth and enter different search terms. The fuzzy search will do that for us. So if we have like 3 search terms that we try to find as a single search, then it might drop one of them, or maybe we have a typo in it, and it will be more forgiving in terms of results that we get. Predictive debugger is also very interesting because if we debug, we might want to look into the future. What path will our program take? What route will it go? We probably can see value changes as they happen. We will also take JetBrains annotations into account. So if a method says, I will stop the execution, then you will know that in advance before it happens. Code inspections, there will be, the most interesting one is probably the N+1 problem. So I don't do a lot with databases, but everyone who has worked with Entity Framework probably has heard about them, N+1 problems, and we kind of give you static code inspections for that, or hopefully will. And the last is Avalonia bindings. I will also briefly, after Khalid has finished with the Rider roadmap, we will add binding support also for styles or for the CSS-like styles in Avalonia, which is a cross-platform UI framework. And maybe now Khalid follows, and then I will try to close.
Okay, yeah, I mean, again, ReSharper is what kind of powers Rider. So a lot of what you see on the ReSharper side will likely make its way into Rider. I know as a macOS user and someone who's maybe not on Windows, I'm really looking forward to .NET 5 and C#9. C#9 brings with it things like record, the record type, and also top-level statements, which are some nice things, and the nullability stuff that Matthias showed earlier. Performance is always top of mind for the team, so we're constantly trying to think about workloads that our users are working with and how to make those experiences a lot better for them. So again, performance is always top of mind for the Rider team. Enterprise features. There are things around Entity Framework and Entity Framework Core and other tools, potentially things like tools that people use in enterprise type applications. There's also a toolbar redesign coming for the top of Rider. Sometimes it can feel a little cluttered. So I know we do a lot of UI UX studies here at JetBrains, and we're working on a toolbar redesign that should make it a little easier to work with some of the features inside of Rider. We're also bringing project structure diagrams. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is a feature that's already in ReSharper. So this is going to be ported over into Rider, and Rider users will be able to do things like diagram the topology of their application, class dependencies, and things like that. So I think Rider users will really appreciate that. I've seen the welcome screen redesign, which is really, really cool. I'm very excited about this particular feature because while the welcome screen right now is great, it's going to get even better. So you're going to be able to jump faster into things like cloning a GitHub repo or starting a sample or firing up a template. So I don't have anything to share in particular in terms of screenshots there, but I think once people start seeing it, they're going to welcome, no pun intended, welcome the welcome screen redesign. So for Xamarin users and people who are building native macOS applications, macOS plist editor is coming. So you'll be able to have a better experience modifying plist files.
Do you happen to know if that also works with plist files outside of Xamarin? Because I recently had that I wanted to modify a plist, and it's actually very hard to find a good tool. I mean, at least I didn't find one.
Yeah, I think it will be from the documentation that I wrote. If you're building like a Mac native application, using maybe a different type of framework. I know Uno platform also supports macOS as a target destination. I believe this stuff will work as well, because this is just a general plist editor. So things like, I forget what the exact word for it is, but features that your app might want to do is what the plist file does. So if you need access to the file system or Bluetooth or something like that, that's kind of where you would define those settings in the plist file. Also, we mentioned the license update at the beginning of this screencast or this meeting. We're looking to support people who want to try Rider out and are coming from other IDEs. So we're putting a concerted effort in terms of trying to migrate as many of the settings and personal touches from those IDEs into Rider, so that experience can be a lot smoother for folks just dabbling or thinking about moving to Rider. And obviously, the Rider team is always thinking about how to make developers more productive and really enjoy their development experience. So there's a lot more on the horizon, and we're always listening for feedback there. So that's the essential roadmap for 2020.3. But like all things can change and plans can get shifted. But I know right now with .NET 5 right on the horizon, and it's pretty much feature stable at this point from the .NET team, that's something we're going to be focusing on heavily.
You could say don't pin to top us on certain things here.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
I was going to say our jokes are better than the ones that Matt brought, but no.
Oh, now we're just bullying Matt. Come on, guys. No.
Wait. He makes a joke like that, and I get the.
All right. I think that was it with the roadmap. One last time, Maarten, my screen, please.
There you go.
So, like I said, we kind of missed to reorganize our slides with Khalid and me. What I wanted to mention also is the Avalonia plugin. That's recent news, actually. It's not part of our usual release, but one of our developers, he's working on this plugin for Avalonia to help you, write code for Avalonia better. I don't actually know what it does. But you can see how it works for you. You can go to the GitHub page, which is for never and then /Avalonia Rider. You though have to make one manual step, which is to add the plugin repository inside the plugins settings page, which is in the upper right, or should be in the upper right. I can quickly show you, which is here in plugins, and then here you manage the plugin repositories. Yeah, exactly. So I think that was it. Regarding Avalonia, one more thing. It might happen that we have a webinar around that. I don't know where exactly, if it's through our own channel or through .NET Foundation channel. Let's see, but you can stay up to date if you follow our product Twitter account. And yeah, I think that was it. I want to say thanks to everyone here who has joined our party. I hope you enjoyed it. And you can always feel free to ping us on Twitter, through mail, whatever you prefer.
Mm-hmm. We should thank the .NET Foundation again, right? And Claire Novotny for allowing us to kind of stream here. So thank you again to the .NET Foundation. I think this has been really fun for us. So.
Right.
All right. Yeah, reach out to us. And again, thanks for joining, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everybody.